Jacob was an art collector, passionate about the beauty and mystery of paintings. He attended auctions, browsed small galleries, and even sifted through dusty flea markets in search of unique pieces. On a rainy afternoon, he wandered into a dilapidated antique shop on the outskirts of the city. The scent of old wood and damp books filled the air. At the back, hidden among stacks of dusty paintings, something caught his eye. It was a large canvas in a heavy black frame. The painting depicted a landscape, a misty forest with a winding path leading to a dark castle in the distance. It almost seemed to move, as if the wind rustled through the branches and the light shifted depending on the angle. There was something hypnotic about it. The shopkeeper, an older man with a nervous smile, looked up as Jacob lifted the canvas. "An extraordinary piece, isn't it?" the shopkeeper said. "But perhaps it's better left alone. They say it has peculiarities." Jacob grinned. "A good story only increases its value, doesn't it? How much?" The man hesitated before naming a price. It was surprisingly low, given the quality of the painting. Without further hesitation, Jacob paid and took it home. In his apartment, Jacob hung the painting in his living room, directly across from his favorite chair. The details were breathtaking. He kept discovering new nuances in the shadows and light. But after a few days, he began to notice something strange. The painting seemed to change, small things. The mist in the forest grew denser, almost impenetrable. The castle in the distance seemed closer, as if it was slowly emerging from the shadows. And sometimes, when he glanced at it from the corner of his eye, he thought he saw a vague figure standing on the path. Jacob laughed at his own imagination. "Too much work, too little sleep," he muttered. But the changes continued. One evening, after a long day at work, he collapsed into his chair and felt a strange urge to stare at the painting. The longer he looked, the more he felt as if he could smell the landscape, the scent of damp earth and pine needles. He even heard the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. He closed his eyes, but the image remained behind his eyelids. His nights became restless. Jacob dreamed of the forest over and over again. He walked the path toward the castle, but never got any closer. It was as if the ground beneath him kept pushing him back. When he woke up, he felt exhausted, as if he had truly been walking all night. One morning, he looked in the mirror and recoiled. His skin seemed paler, almost gray, as if the color had been drained from his face. But what disturbed him the most were his eyes. They had taken on the same haze as the landscape in the painting. Jacob began avoiding friends and spent more and more time at home. He would sit for hours before the painting, as if it had him in its grip. One evening, he noticed something that made his breath hitch. In the distance, on the path, he no longer saw just a shadowy figure. He recognized the face. It was his own. He rubbed his eyes, but the image remained. The figure in the painting stared back at him, its gaze filled with sorrow and despair. That night, Jacob dreamed of the painting again. But this time he reached the castle. The gates swung open by themselves, and an icy wind pushed him inside. The hallways were dark and endless, filled with whispering voices calling his name. He woke up with a jolt. The painting now dominated his living room, as if it had grown larger, completely overwhelming him. The mist seemed to seep from the canvas, creeping through his apartment. Jacob tried to take the painting off the wall, but it wouldn't budge. His hands trembled as he stumbled backward. "I need to get rid of this," he whispered to himself, but it was already too late. The next morning, a neighbor called the police. He hadn't seen Jacob in days and was concerned. When the officers forced open the door, they found the apartment empty, except for the painting. The canvas had changed. The castle was now in sharp focus, and on the path, right before the gates, stood a man. His face was unmistakable. It was Jacob. The painting was sold again, passed from hand to hand, always with the same warning. But like Jacob, new owners ignored the story. And so, the painting continued its grip, trapping one soul after another in its endless forest.